Hey guys, this is John. I'm playing Rajashekar in the 15-minute pool in ICC. He opens with e4, and let's play a Caro-Kann, c6. And, ooh, okay, so maybe we'll get somewhat unexplored line, at least on my channel. This line was c4, so this is the idea at knight f6. And I can regain the pawn, but we have an IQP scenario now. I'll play knight c6, and usually they play d4. And I'm going to be playing against the isolated queen's pawn, aka the IQP. Another move that was playable was bishop g4 on the previous move instead of e6. And here, I can't recall if I'm supposed to play bishop b4 or bishop e7. Probably both are playable. I think I'm actually going to play bishop b4 and maybe reserve e7 for the other knight in the future. So if he plays like bishop d2, I can castle. And bishop takes h7, the Greek gift would not work because I could take it, knight g5, and then after king g8, queen h5 check, I have knight f6 in defense. So I'm fairly certain the Greek gift is not a good idea in that position. Only thing is I might want to play h6 now as a measure against bishop takes h7, because I would like to play this knight from c6 to e7 in order to continue blockading on d5. But if I do it now, actually, maybe I can do it now. So knight ce7, bishop takes h7, king takes h7, knight g5 check, king back. I still have knight f6 as a defensive resource, don't I? I'm still going to play it, though. I think this is a useful move. I don't think you often want the pawn on g6 instead of h6 when you have your dark square bishop this far away from your king. If my bishop was a little bit closer, I might have reconsidered that. Kind of going out on a limb here with h6, though. I'm a little ignorant of the theory in this line. Let me just check my opponent's stats. They are a member of the Team 45-45 League, which is a serious slow play league here on ICC. His 15-minute peak rating is 2198. He's played many, many games at longer time controls. Okay, rook e1 makes sense. If I play knight ce7 now, probably knight e5 will be the answer. Does that bother us? I don't know. I don't know. It does make way for queen g4 to happen. Maybe I should start with a move like bishop d7, but the thing I don't like about bishop d7 is that they can take on d5, and I'd have to recapture with my pawn. So there's that to consider. Could play rook e8 as like a neutral move to start out, but he has other neutral improving moves he can make, like rook c1. So I kind of think if I'm going to play this, I should probably do that move. So knight ce7, knight e5, then what? Like b6 or something? But queen g4 worries me. That queen could be a pest out there. Huh. And my dark square bishop, while performing a function in that it attacks c3, that might be the end of its usefulness. Maybe I should play knight f6. New plan. Move the knight back and introduce knight takes d4 as an idea. Looks a little crude, but maybe it's okay. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm starting to think that move 10 h6 was inaccurate, and that maybe I should have played knight ce7 right away if I was going to do that. This is interesting nonetheless. Maybe I can justify it as being better now than on the previous move, knight f6 that is, because he doesn't have bishop g5 pinning me. It's unclear if I actually really want to take this pawn on d4. I am threatening to take it at the moment, but he might gain some compensation because oftentimes the player with the IQP won't mind parting with that IQP at some point. They would like to exchange it if possible, but sometimes just straight up sacrificing it is possible. We'll see how they react to this move, knight f6. Something like knight e2 would be too slow. That puts the knight on a poor square. It blocks his rook. It invites exchanges, which in a vacuum, exchanges should be beneficial for black here because I have a better pawn structure. And the more pieces I can trade, the less defenders the d pawn will have. Yeah, I think knight f6 was a reasonable adjustment to the position after rook e1. Puts him in an interesting position too, whether to defend this pawn or not. Rook c1. Okay, so he's going to sack that pawn. Do I take him up on it? So let's calculate for a moment. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4. He could move this dark square bishop somewhere. There's also ideas involving knight b5 I have to be cautious about. Actually, maybe knight b5 even right there. Then I take d3, he takes b4, hitting my rook. Somehow I don't like the look of that. Okay, I might have to proceed with caution. Rook c1 could be a decent move. What if b6? b6 seems slow. It also weakens my knight. Could play bishop d7. Bishop d7 might be okay. Let's do that. Now I can't play knight takes d4, but at least I'm completing my development. I can go rook c8 soon. So I'm a little bit skeptical of my play over the past, let's say, 3 moves. Kind of trying to find my way through the dark here. But I think my position's reasonable still. So we'll go with it. If a3, I think I would drop the bishop back to e7. Maybe d6, but on d6 it's more exposed. Like he can attack it with moves like knight e4 or knight b5. So probably e7. Don't think I want to trade on c3 and voluntarily part with my bishop pair. My light square bishop is blocking my queen, but d5 is not realistic for him right now, so I'm not concerned. Queen b3 could be a candidate move for him. Maybe with an eye towards supporting d5 and also looking at my bishop on b4. I would suspect he does something on the queen side, like a3 or queen b3. If knight e5, I might think about snatching the d4 pawn since it would be undefended then. But for the moment, I'm just honestly trying to complete my development and play rook c8. Stay in an IQP formation if possible. I'm currently number 2 on the best list behind this guy Impitoyable. I just had a look at the list like right before this game. And he's in the mid 2400s, surprisingly, even though I haven't really seen him play much, but he's active in this category. Usually 2392 would be good enough for the top spot in 15 minutes. I kind of wonder how the 25 plus 10 minute pool is shaking out. It's still a very new pool. It's been around like a week. But I bet there's some players who are already well over 2,000 in that pool. It takes a little while for the ratings to sort themselves out. All right, he plays queen b3 as suspected. That's a good move. I mean, I think that's useful. Because if I move this bishop, he can maybe take on b7. I don't think I'm trapping his queen with a move like knight a5 after that. So I sort of want to play a move that defends the b pawn. But rook b8, he has bishop f4, so that would be an inaccuracy. I'd have to move my rook again. Queen c7 isn't appetizing because I don't want to put my queen on the same file as his rook. Also, there's knight b5 stuff with a discovered attack on my bishop. So what to do? Queen b6, they maybe have like knight a4. I guess I could play rook c8 and then in the event of a3, take on c3. Feels like a concession to do that, but maybe that's the best way forward. Then if they take with a pawn, I can go knight a5 and maybe have hopes of blockading this c4 square. That might not be bad. Might not be good either, though. Might just be kind of bleh. I'd like to keep my dark square bishop if possible. So let's say rook c8, a3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight a5. Let's say queen c2 maybe then. I can get into c4, but he could trade and then play knight e5. So it's not all one-way traffic if that happens. What about rook c8, a3, bishop d6? If queen takes b7, rook b8. Oh, I do win b2 after that. That's an important point. You know, I could also play the move b6, but b6 somehow feels weakening. Okay, I'm going to play rook c8 and think about it after he plays a3. Because I think bishop takes c3 is a decent option, but I also might speculate on bishop d6. So a3, bishop d6, queen takes b7. Knight a5 doesn't do anything, just queen a6, unless rook c6 is causing problems. Ooh, maybe rook c6 at that point. So the line, once again, I'm looking at right now is a3, bishop d6, queen takes b7, knight a5, and the only, oh, actually the a7 pawn is hanging in that case, but then I have rook a8 all the same, and the queen is trapped. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls for white after bishop d6, queen takes b7, isn't there? Maybe I should go for that. What if bishop d6, knight e4? I take, they take with their bishop. I can always play knight a5 then. Okay, I'm going to do this move. Quick decision. Try to keep that clock ticking on their side, not my side. So with bishop d6, I'm basically daring them to take this pawn, because just on evaluation of a couple quick lines there, it seems dangerous for white to do so. At the very least, after queen takes b7, I can play rook b8, queen a6, rook takes b2. And I've regained the pawn. I'm eyeing their bishop on d2. White's probably fine there, but yeah, I wouldn't mind playing that position for black. And there's other stuff like queen takes b7, and instead of rook b8, knight a5, like I was just looking at. And then if, say, queen a6, I was looking at rook c6, thinking they had to go queen b5 and step into potential discoveries like rook takes c3. But rook c6 could be met by queen takes a7. And I don't know that I'm able to trap the queen. Like bishop b8, they can actually escape to a8 then? Huh. So maybe on queen takes b7, I just settle for rook b8 and don't overthink it, because when you're analyzing lines to try to trap a queen, and like every line you look at, the queen like always has a square they can go to, a single square, you're probably not trapping that queen, in my experience. Queens are slippery, and all they need is like one little. They're like octopus or something, right? Like octopi are notorious for being able to escape from a lot of crazy circumstances. Like you can look up on YouTube like videos of octopi, escaping from like a small hole in the side of a ship or something. Like they can squeeze their entire body through because their actual skeleton is only like very small in proportion to their body. So a queen, I don't know how I got on that analogy, but a queen is similar in my mind because they only need a small escape route in order to make it to safety. So don't spin your wheels too much in your games trying to trap a queen if it's not materializing. This is kind of what I was hoping would happen. I think white's contemplating the consequences of queen takes b7, and maybe they're looking at some complicated lines that are not working out for them. Okay, knight b5, that's reasonable. Hits my bishop. I was thinking just bishop b8 in response to that. I could also go bishop e7. The knight is just a visitor on b5. I can always kick it away with a6. So where do I want my bishop? Do I want it on e7 or do I want it on b8? I kind of like b8. Yeah, let's just keep it on b8. but also defends a7. Maybe after a6 and the knight moves back, later on I can play bishop a7 and use the bishop to hit this pawn. Always amazing how quickly these games turn into like blitz games, this 15-minute time control. If you start spending time when you're around 10 minutes or even a little bit more than that, sometimes if you start spending time when you have 11, 12 minutes left, then you can quickly find yourself in a blitz situation. You get under 5 minutes and all of a sudden it's go time. So I feel like I have a pretty big clock momentum going on right now. I don't like knight b5 because knight jumps to your opponent's half of the board that are unsupported, in my experience, are usually weak. You know, unless he has a clear follow-up to that move, I question what knight b5 is really accomplishing. I mean, it's not killing me to put my bishop back on b8. Okay, bishop b1, maybe they're going to set up some battery with their queen. Queen coming to like d3. I can cross this by playing a6 and forcing them to go back to c3. So maybe a6, knight c3, b5 then? And just defend that pawn once and for all. And they could play queen c2, but they're not going to mate me on h7. Yeah, let's play it that way. b5 is helpful. Gain some space on the queen side. They could try to liquidate with d5 right now, but somehow I don't think that should work out for them. Like, if d5, I have knight a5, attacking the queen. I don't have to respond to the tension immediately. And then if they want to keep the pawn defended, they'd have to go back to a2, which looks ugly and not really a part of their plan. Maybe I can just play knight c4 in that case. Yeah, so they're trying to eye the h7 square, but realistically, to pull that off, they gotta get rid of this knight, which seems hard to do. I guess maybe knight e4 is a threat. Like if I were to play queen b6, knight e4, and even though that walks into c-file discoveries, I might not have time to exploit it. Interesting. So perhaps I should move this knight, like maybe knight e7, which stops knight e4. Yeah, let's do that. And perhaps I can put the knight on f5 and block the diagonal and also look at the d4 pawn in a different way where my c-file is open. Queen d3, quickly played. I think they are realizing their time might be an issue going forward. Okay, so, knight g6 is another option here. Bishop c6. If bishop c6, that controls e4, but I wonder if knight e5 could be played then. Bishop c6, knight e5. Let's say bishop takes e5, d takes e5. That endgame might be in white's favor. Bishop c6, knight e5. Bishop takes e5, d takes e5. Let's say queen takes d3, bishop takes d3. Knight d7, perhaps? White has the bishop pair there, but maybe e5 is difficult to defend, actually. Okay, I'm going to play bishop c6. I just like this plan of stopping knight e4, and if they want to go knight e5, all right, we'll go for the endgame. Bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d3, bishop takes d3, knight f, well, actually not knight f, d5, knight d7 was the move I was looking at. And then I can continue with rook f d8. He has the bishop pair plus d6 is a bit vulnerable, but I think I'm solid there. Takes the rook instead. Okay. So I could push that rook back with a move like knight g6, but what about knight f5? Knight f5 attacks d4, and it's more aggressive. Knight g6, I think rook e1, and I don't know if I have a good follow-up there. Knight f5, on the other hand, is dynamic. I can't move this knight, remember, so like knight g4 or something is out of the question. I get mated. What if knight f5, d5? Can they do that? Trying to deflect stuff. Knight f5, d5, knight takes d5. Yeah, I'm not sure about that line. That scares me a little bit. Maybe queen d7 simply right here. Connect our rooks, get ready for rook fd8. Yeah, let's do that. Let's let them figure out. Unless queen d7, queen g3. But then I have knight g6. Yeah, let's let them figure out whether I'm going to play knight f5 or knight g6, or if I'm simply just going to leave my knight here for now. Not going to lie, it's very tempting to play knight g6. Because naturally, I mean, when you have the queen staring down the barrel of your king, you want to relieve that situation. But I think there's something to be said for holding back on that move and staying flexible. I'm trusting that my knight on f6, as it has been doing for the past few moves, is strong enough to just hold everything. It's important that my pawn is on h6, by the way, so they can't play bishop g5 and harass that knight. Bishop takes h6 is a possibility, but I don't think it works. If I take queen check, king h8, maybe that's a little bit dangerous, but like in the event of queen h4, then I could always play knight eg8, holding h6 and f6. Also on bishop takes h6, maybe I could just go knight g6. And he has the rook and the bishop hanging. That could get complicated, though. But I think with the time situation, they just don't have time to figure it out. Queen g3 makes sense. Okay, so bishop takes h6 is the threat. I don't really have time to take on d4 quite yet. Maybe just king h8. Yeah, let's do that. So if bishop takes h6, g takes h6, queen h4, and then I can play knight eg8 and hold everything, I think. It looks super defensive, but I don't think they can get through. Queen g3 is probably a good move, though. That's also a strong move, I think, because after queen takes d4, there's bishop takes h6, discovered attack on my queen. What to do? Knight f5, bishop takes f5, e takes f5. What's going on there? Knight g6, they'll just play bishop takes g6, so I can't play that move. Knight f5, bishop takes f5, e takes f5, d5, let's say. Bishop back to b7. Another option is rook cd8 right now. Now let's do this. Maybe high time we played this move. Queen h3. Okay, now I can go knight g4 and attack that rook and block the attack on f5. This is a convenient move. d4 might be hanging next move too, because then f2 will be under attack. Maybe he should drop the rook back to e2 for that reason. So if queen takes d4 with the rook on e2, he can safely play bishop takes h6 with the discovery because there's no queen takes f2 check. If rook e2, I might just play rook fe8 real quick. Throw the move right back at him when he's dwindling under 2 minutes. Because f3 is out of the question when queen takes d4 is coming with check, I think. Yeah, he probably can't allow that. Ticking down. I think he missed knight g4. Yeah, this is a good move to cover both f5 and h6 simultaneously. He needs a way to keep the initiative going, but I don't see one. Short of sacrificing something, but that any sacrifice is reckless here. Okay, so now I think I can just take this. Queen takes d4, bishop takes h6, queen takes f2 check. Yeah, and then we can, after his king moves, I mean, we can do a number of things. Even queen takes e1 is good there. Rook takes e1, knight f2 check, take his queen, take his bishop after that. So we get away with this move. Queen g3 maybe was okay, but okay, on this one, I think just queen f6 is good. He could play bishop d4, but queen g6. We've won a pawn. Bishop f4 instead. Okay. All right, we'll just play rook f8, dispute the file. Ooh, I see some cool checkmate possibilities. If he plays f3, I have queen d4 check, amusingly. Or I could take on e1 first and then play queen d4 check, but queen d4 check immediately is nicer. And if rook takes d4, then I take on e1. Oh, he saw it. He thwarted my threat. Is g5 too crazy? Yeah, there's no reason to play g5. Queen g3 makes sense. He's trying to embarrass my knight, because now he's disputing the e5 square. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'll just play this move. So that after f3, I can move the knight back to f6. And hold it. And hopefully remain up a pawn. Let's get our king a bit closer. Maybe put the king on f7. Okay, this one I can go here at least. His rook on e1 is loose. He has to take, and then we'll do this. Defend the f-pawn. Let's bring our king up. He has very little time now, so let's go here. Stop bishop c5 and maybe go king e7. Just playing off of his time pressure and also playing solid moves too. I'm going to go a5 now and try to go b4. Push his knight around and then try to get the bishop to b5. Yeah, there's not much he can do with 10 seconds left. I mean, we could take our time and try to find better moves, but I mean, what's the point? The point would be trying to play a completely good game at the expense of being practical. B3 or knight e5. Here I will spend a little time. I just want to play the best move now, because I feel like I've reached a technically good position. Let's play knight e5. And then bring this here, is what I was thinking. Yeah, he's just pre-moving now, but yeah, that clock is killer in these games, as you've seen from my last couple standard games. And I think I've done a pretty good job of being more practical with my time usage lately. I mean, this is an example of what can happen, even in positions where you might be under some attack or pressure. The clock is the great equalizing factor, because once it starts ticking, I mean, you got to be on the ball. You can't just continue playing at the same pace. So he didn't start adjusting to that till too late. Okay, let's take a look at that, though. So this c4 move against the Caro-Kann is quite interesting. Normally in this line, from the games that I've seen, well, I shouldn't say normally. I don't know the relative frequencies of how popular the moves are, but bishop b5 check is one interesting idea. The idea of this move is to disrupt black's normal flow of development, force me to put a piece on d7, be it the bishop or the knight. And in the case of like the bishop, for instance, white can drop this bishop back here and try to make it difficult for black to regain the pawn. I probably would have played knight bd7 because that's the setup that I know. And then after, say, knight c3, there's one option for black to play like g6, bishop g7, and castle, and then eventually try to regain this pawn with moves like knight b6, or sometimes even like a6, kick the bishop away, b6, bishop b7, and just try to assault that pawn many times in the middle game. So if white were to play bishop b5 check, I think black has to be willing to play a pawn down for a little bit. It is double isolated though, so it's not a big deal. And it's more important for black to get untangled and complete their development and try to regain that pawn later if necessary. But my opponent just played knight c3, then I took on d5. And now we have an isolated queen's pawn situation. After d4, bishop g4 is another move. And there's a line after queen b3 that can lead to some simplifications that I wasn't willing to go into. So I just played e6. I haven't really played this setup from the black side, but it's interesting. Bishop b4, bishop e7 is also possible. So I guess the question for me is what to do here, because I really wasn't sure. This is a position where I know the ideas, and I've seen many positions of this type, but I don't know the exact move order, and that still is important here. You can't get by just on ideas alone in this position. What does the engine say? Bishop e7. Yeah, I thought about that. Because sometimes black will put the bishop here and then go knight ce7. The bishop can be well placed on f6, attacking d4 and also monitoring g5. But I sort of feel like in that case, why didn't I play bishop e7 initially? Why did I waste my time with bishop b4 on move 8? I guess I could play something kind of like useful, like rook e8. Do these discoveries ever work?
Check.
I don't think they should.
Check.
But maybe when the rook's here instead of f8, I have problems on f7, right? Because like if here, I can no longer play knight f6, just worrying about that because he can take here. Maybe black's not losing immediately, but this is not something I think I should allow. Yeah, I'm really not sure. I sort of think bishop e7 probably is the move. But maybe h6 isn't so bad. h6, rook e1. Then I played knight f6. Yeah, because I was worried if this, then like knight e5 would give white easy play. Maybe with the queen popping out to g4. Because once I put that pawn on h6, it's exposed, and bishop takes h6 is always hanging in the air. There's some useful aspects to h6, like mainly to control the g5 square, but it's also on a square in which white can sacrifice in the future. So I think it's good that I avoided knight ce7. Bishop e7 seems inconsistent, so maybe the way I played it is, relatively speaking, all right. Knight f6. Rook c1, daring me to take that pawn. I got a little spooked by the following variation, and then knight b5. But maybe I'm just, oh, his knight is hanging at b5. I thought this would force me to trade queens, because my queen and my rook are under attack. So I thought something like this would have to happen. And then my rook's under attack, and then white looks completely active for the single pawn, like maybe knight c7 next move or something. But I didn't see that in this line, queen takes b5 is possible. Bishop takes f8, king takes f8, and yeah, black is better. I have 2 minor pieces plus a pawn against a single rook, so unless I run into some initiative of white's, I should be much better. So maybe I should have looked at that line a little bit closer. But also, in these 15-minute games, as you've seen, the initiative is very important, so I didn't want to cede that. So I just played bishop d7, developing. Queen here, rook c8. a3, I put the bishop on d6. So if queen takes, then I was looking at rook b8 and taking on b2. But maybe there is a queen trap. I saw the engine just spiked in black's favor. Knight a5. So if queen takes a7, rook a8. Oh, and the queen's just trapped straight away. Okay. Did I see rook a8? I can't even remember. I want to say no. I think... I don't know. The variation I was mostly looking at was queen a6. Rook c6, and then this move. And that's a little bit different. Yeah, okay, I did look at this line. Bishop b8, and then queen here. Oh, but I have bishop takes h2. Aha, clever. And then the queen hangs. Bishop takes h2 came with check. Well, that answers that question. So queen takes b7 is bad news. Knight a5, and yeah, the tactics are going in white's favor. So my speech about the squid and its, or the octopus and its slipperiness, aka the queen, for forget about that for now. I can actually trap the queen in this instance. But the advice holds true in a lot of cases. If you're like sitting there analyzing a ton of lines and the queen is like always escaping, I mean, it's actually likely that the queen is escaping and there is no queen trap. You should stop looking for it. Spend your time on other things. But yeah, white did not take, so they played knight b5. I didn't like that move. I thought maybe knight e4 was a more natural move if they want to try to trade. And I see the computer likes white quite a bit. It wants to go knight e4, trade. Then they're hitting this. Now the queen might be in less danger because they traded one pair of pieces, plus the bishop could help out the queen. So yeah, like if b6 or something, I think they were advocating a plan, like drop the bishop back, c2, maybe b1 also, and try to come here and do something similar to what white did in the game. So knight b5 as played. Oh, I could have played queen b6 and ignored the attack on the bishop. Okay, because of the pin. I didn't see that option, but that makes sense. Yeah, that would really highlight the drawbacks of knight b5, because now I'd be threatening a6. But I just played bishop b8, bishop b1, queen b6 is still good. I played a6, and then b5. Yeah, another option was knight a5 hitting the queen, and if queen c2, I was thinking jump in here, pressurizing d2 and b2, but this move is also good, bishop c6. My knight holds the h7 square. I'm threatening bishop takes f3 followed by queen takes d4. That does look excellent as well. So I would say it's safe to say that white lost the thread maybe right around here, especially with knight b5. I think if they had continued with like a move like knight e4, they would have been doing okay, but knight b5 is superficial. Queen c2. Yep, and I maneuver the knight, knight e7. I think this is a good plan. Enabling the knight to come to f5 or g6. Bishop c6. Here I was expecting knight e5. Oh, they did play that actually, but they just took with the rook. I was expecting d takes e5, and then the following endgame, knight d7. At first I thought this was better for white, but then the more I looked at it, the more I realized black is probably fine. The computer shows a small edge for white, but as long as white can't like put this knight into d6 unopposed, then I'm doing fine. Like for the moment, I don't think they can do it because the pawn on e5 hangs and the bishop is in turn is hanging. So I think black's compact structure should be sufficient to hold the balance here. But they took with a rook, and they're under 5 minutes at this point. Queen d7, maybe a bit fancy. I think in retrospect, I probably should have just played knight g6 or knight f5. Maybe knight g6 to block the diagonal, because they did get something going by swinging the queen over to my king side. What about knight f5 too? I was worried about d5 in this case. Using tactics to try to separate the e6 pawn from the knight. You can't do that because the rook takes or queen takes. And if, say, bishop takes, then knight takes, I could take here, but I have an issue about which way to take back, right? Because if knight takes, then they can take on d5, and this knight is going to end up undefended. Like queen takes, pawn takes, take here. White has 2 bishops against my rook. So something just seemed off about playing knight f5 when d5 was possible. So hence I didn't play that move, but maybe I should have opted for knight g6. So instead I played queen d7, queen g3, and king h8. Queen takes d4 is actually possible, huh? Because after this, I can put the queen in on g4 and offer a trade. I looked at some version of that, but it seemed artificial. Maybe it's defending, though. Looks like it is, according to the computer. Rook g5, queen takes, rook takes, knight h5. I hold this point, attack the rook, and black is coming out relatively unscathed. I played king h8. Maybe queen h4 should be played, though, because that hits h6 and f6. I was going to play this move, which looks pretty passive, but I think it is defending for now. But maybe they should have played queen h4, I think. Rook d1 maybe was okay. Knight f5, mistake according to the engine. Take. Now d5 would have been good? Okay. I don't know if I would contemplate taking this pawn. Probably not, in view of the d-file pressure, so probably bishop b7. And now queen f3. Attacking f5. And that's a difficult pawn to defend because if g6, my h6 pawn falls. Well, I had a feeling when I played knight f5 that there was something for white, but he was getting low on time at this point, and I just wanted to continue playing fast. And I felt like my position was solid enough where I could fade a direct attack. But yeah, he took, I took back, and then this move is well met by knight g4, I think. And this really took the wind out of his sails. Defending h6, blocking his queen, attacking e5. You could tell he lost the thread after this. Yeah, queen takes d4. I think rook e2 was probably close to forced, because then queen takes d4 does not work because it takes, and I can't win f2, as I was explaining. But, I mean, even on rook e2, I think I'm still doing pretty well. Whoops, rook fe8 would be a good move. That knight is a huge pest on g4. So he did this. Queen takes, bishop e3. Probably I didn't play this completely accurately, but once again, the time is a big factor. Queen g6 is a big mistake. Should have played rook cd8. Okay. Yeah, stop a rook from coming into d6 eventually. Because if he trades, he has that back rank issue. So he doesn't have time to play rook d6, trying to fork my queen and bishop. So queen g6, h3, knight f6. Would have been better here. Rook takes e8, rook takes e8, then f3. Okay, and if knight f6, just trade and play rook d6, rook c8, and then bishop e5. Okay, and white has not won the pawn back yet, but it looks like they're about to. Because if this knight moves, I, at the very least, lose g6. What if knight d7? Just bishop d4. Interesting, because even though I can keep the pawn, I'm a lot worse because of white's piece activity. Knight d5. Huh. Yeah, I was just looking for a way to save my knight after queen g3, because now it's running out of squares. Queen g3 takes over the e5 square, so like if he had played... Oh yeah, this is a little trick. If he had played f3, he's losing in view of this idea, queen d4, which I pointed out. And if he takes, we get this beautiful checkmate with the knight controlling the f2 square. And if king f1, we mate him on f2. If king h1, there's knight here check with mate shortly. So he avoided that, though, queen g3. He just had too little time left at this point. f4 exploiting the pin.
Check.
We traded. And now his bishop is a ways away from being relevant. So like compared to that previous line we were looking at where the bishop was on e5, here it's a ways away. Yeah, and again, I'm sure I didn't play this 100% accurately, but b4.
Check.
Got the rook into c2.
Check.
Knight e5, yep, trying to come to c4, and he was just pre-moving and soon blundered his rook. Okay, so a new line for this channel, e4, c6, d5, or e4, c6, c4, and then d5. I don't recall having faced this before, and I'm pretty certain I haven't played this from the white side. I'll have to look up the theory in this line. And if anyone knows, as usual, let me know, because I have a feeling h6 might be okay, but maybe I should have dropped the bishop back to e7. I think that's the key in this line, as I recall. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.